Hi, welcome back to my second video, which is again, as I said in the first video, an experiment to try to see if I can bridge the gap that exists between how I understand and my ability to communicate with you that understanding. So I've been a teacher a long time. I'm a substitute teacher presently, and so I go to classrooms, a lot of different classrooms, and I have to learn how to ad hoc and be able to perform on the fly and sometimes pressureful or anxious situations. And I've learned that as long as I have come from a truthful, honest place of integrity, place of giving, place of having a meaningful value to share, that's received. So I hope that you're tuning in, because the first video you saw was an indication that I don't do a lot of bullshitting. I know it's a bad word, you're not supposed to say it's profanity. I don't do a lot of profanity, but I find that word to be really meaningful and essential in our current political climate. Sometimes there's a lot of bullshitting going on, and I hope not to offer any. So last time we talked about the basic essence of human identity as hero, contrasted with this overlaid noise called ego. This is the word ego translates into several languages to mean owner. It's the part of us inwardly that does, moves, thinks, controls, owns, decides, chooses. All those movements of power, leverage is ego. Who we are, what we are at essence, without any movement, without any alteration, without any change, without any escape or denial or rejection or ambition or movement away from this eternal now, is hero. So I hope to, I'm gonna turn off TV. Turn off. So I hope to talk today about death, this word, death, this thing that we all commonly appreciate. Also, I hope that you can forgive the birds, right? You'll notice that the background is different now. I've got this really cool thing I got from a thrift store hanging up on my wall. It's just cool, right? Nice color and stuff. It's better than the blank wall. Birds are also adornment, sonic adornment. I've got two parakeets. They go on and on all day. Sometimes they're really loud. If I get loud, they'll get loud. I hope you can forgive that. Just a couple of housekeeping points. So death. Since I was a child, has been no greater object of curiosity. There's been no greater mystery. No greater thing that I've wanted to understand and know what happens when you die. Everybody has that. Everybody has some, sometimes intense, sometimes casual interest in that. What happens when you die? Who are we? Why is there death? What's going on such that death happens? Right? Is it an ending? Is it black? Is it just black? Do we go to heaven? Do we go to hell if we're bad? Right? Do we get reincarnated? Like, what's that all about? What's going on? How does this thing work? Right? So these questions have been really hot for me. I've been, they've helped me sharpen the edge of inquiry, and to use that blade of inquiry to cut, to penetrate, and to peel back the layers so that I can see more and more clearly. So I should say right at the outset that one of my greatest teachers that has influenced my understandings, a lot of things, so many things, has been Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti. If you've read Krishnamurti, you have an appreciation for his iconoclasm, that he is not coming from some tradition, trying to sell the tradition, trying to sell some beliefs that he was sold. Right? Lots of people, lots of spiritual teachers come from a tradition, and they're simply sort of like, following the lineage of the tradition, following the language, the philosophical worldview of the tradition, and just promoting it. Krishnamurti found that to be immoral. Talked about that as violent, to simply expect obedience to spiritual authority. He really knocked down spiritual authority as a thing, that there is no spiritual authority. No one can teach you. No one can show you. No one can guide you. You don't have a guru. If you have a guru, you're attached. And if you have that attachment, then you are subject to being pushed and pulled. Right, Jonestown, we don't need to mention that too much, right? People were led to their own violent suicides, some cases not suicide. People want to get out at the last minute and were shot, killed, right? Really violent stuff that happens under authority, particularly spiritual authority. So when we are concerned with death, and who we are and what we are and why we are and what that is, we must reject the beliefs that we have acquired from others. We must put aside what we have accumulated from traditions, from religions, from other authorities, from philosophies, from what this person says and what that person says and what I believe. All of that must end. All of that must be put aside, so that we have a fresh capacity to see clearly. Hear me, watch me resting on spiritual authority. Krishnamurti said, right? Krishnamurti said, he put forth the notion, what is death? Death is the ending of the known. Now, we could just hang up our clothes and go home on that and say, oh, he already solved it, we don't need to solve it ourselves, right? The ending of the known. So that means to put aside and to let go of the traditions, the beliefs, the attachments that we've had and have to what other people say and what other traditions describe, and I believe this, and that idea sounds great, and I'm attached to this particular belief and I cling to it. Right? That clinging itself, the attachment itself, must end, and that is death. So we're going to try to solve this thing, try to see it. We're going to tease it apart. It's not something that we can hold on to and, I got it. You can put it up. You get it, you put it in your pocket, you write it down, you put it in your pocket and walk away, you're saved. It doesn't really work like that. All right, in order to really fully apprehend and appreciate the meaning of death, we must do it. Not simply accept the idea that it's the ending of the known. Oh, I get it. We must end the known. So what does that mean? Right? We talked yesterday, right, in the other video, about the known being this horizontal capacity of the toroid. And we're going to go into that again and again so that we can flesh it out, so that we can see it more and more clearly. Toroid. The toroid is a donut-shaped ring of energy. We can see it in nature all over the place. I invite you to appreciate a film called Thrive, in which the dynamics of the toroid are examined really intimately. I invite you to YouTube the Primer Fields, Primer, Primer Fields Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. I think this is Dave LaPointe, examines his appreciation of the magnetic fields that surround and are substrate to galaxies and planets. And again, Ken Wheeler, we described yesterday, Theoria Apophasis on YouTube shows and explains the essence of the magnetic field is a toroid with a reciprocating vortex a moving vortex. That motion is inherent to the field. It's not simply mechanical motion, parts moving other parts, right? The Greeks describe, well, was the original mover, and these European philosophers tried to figure out, well, God must be the original mover, the one that set the whole thing in motion, right? Big Bang, right? Scientists are still resting on that, still trying to hold on to that notion of an original mover. It may not be that way at all. Maybe that motion is inherent to the dynamics that are then displayed mechanically. So the toroid is an interesting model. It is an effective model through which to see and understand and appreciate death. And we'll try to do it in this way where, again, if we imagine, or consider, or see that our verticalness is an inwarding, we've got, through the top, we call it our head. We've got our eyes, our ears, our gastrointestinal entry, through which nourishment comes in, and it spirals around in the intestines, and there's a kind of, what do they call it? It's a clockwise or counterclockwise movement of the gastrointestinal tract, that it's churning, it's spiraling, so the food is going around that way. All streams and rivers are not simply water pushing downhill, but actually turning, spiraling. I invite you to check out Victor Schauberger and his understanding of that, because there are temperature dynamics in a river, in a stream, that as water moves, it's heated by the sun on top, and so the cold water comes up and the warm water sinks, and it's a circling, spiraling movement of water. It's all spiraling in that way. So inwardly, we've got these upper receptive channels, and they spiral. And so I'm not going to get too precise I'm not going to coordinate every point of the chakras, but we've got a 7-layer system. This is deep in the Hindu tradition, of different vortices, different 7 chakras that are spirals, vortices of energy moving through. That is your inwardness, right? Your vertical. We typically say inside, right? What's inside me? What's inside me? My mind, my feelings, my thoughts, my aloneness inside the body. We're used to saying inside, and I hope to invite a reconsideration of that term inside as a static location, because you look inside. What are you going to see? Tissue and organs and gut and food and blood. Right? There's no inside. There's no inside. There's inwarding, inwardfulness, and there's no outside. There's no world outside. There's not an outside to the skin, because you look. Like here's my skin, right? Here's my skin, and then there's hair on top of the skin, right? You get closer and closer and closer, and it looks like maybe there's a boundary between the skin and the air. You call the air the world, call the skin me. But it's really kind of simplistic, because as I breathe, and as I take in water, and as I pee water out, and as I exhale out, and as I take food in and I poo food out, there's a constant cycling. So inside and outside, there's inwarding and there's outwarding. So it's a movement. It's a spiral spiral vortex of movement. And it's a constant moving. There's not a static inside, and there's not a static outside. There's an inwarding, inward fulling, inward fullness, and an outwarding, an outward fulling, right? So we've got to conceive, we've got to look through that lens that there's always a movement going on, and there's always exchange going on. So, when we're considering what is death, we have to appreciate that, right? So we take in information, and then there is this outward part of the torus. So the torus that you are, that are, if we consider the chakras, there are many toruses. There's seven toroidal fields, but they're all sort of toroiding together. And again, I'm not going to get precise and scientific about that because that's not the area of my study, and it's not something that I'm willing to really put a lot of time and energy into. We do recognize that there's an inward fillingness and an outward fillingness. So the world, Krishnamurti said this a lot, and again, we're not going to rest on his authority, we're just going to observe it together. The world is an outward expression of me. The outer fields of phenomena of other people, other organisms, ecologies, the night sky, the day sky, the sun, the moon, the galaxies, the stars, all that stuff outside is an outward fillingness of consciousness, inward filling. Right, so there's an exchange. It's a constant, singular movement. Right, I'm churning inwardly, and then I'm churning outwardly. And the outwarding is a reflection of the inwarding. So there's no separation. We don't say that the outside is separate from the inside. That's old school, it's false. Rather, we say that the inwarding and the outwarding are a mutual, seamless exchange. So again, with the torus goes in and then it comes out. And in the case of our human experience, that outward, the further outer perimeter of the donut is the world. And the deep inwardness of the vortex in the middle is myself. I call that me. I call that my mind, my consciousness, my awareness. Me. Right? It's an inward collectivity into singularity that is integral. My integrity is another name for awareness, mind, consciousness, being. Right? It's an integrity. And the body has been evolving that integrity, that integration fullness for millennia. For millions and millions of years. On the earth, it's 4.5 billion. And then how long is life? What, 2 billion for life? How long for mammals? More than 65 million, because little rats and little mammals, when the dinosaurs perished of the comet at the Yucatan Peninsula in 65 million years ago. So this skin, this bony tissue, the simian per se, been evolving for 4 million Ramapithecus and 2.5 million Australopithecus and 1.5 million for Homo habilis and Homo erectus and Homo denisovans, and these dimensions of the upright simian been refining most acutely in the last 1.5 million to this, right? Last 1.5 million, I remember seeing something on Nova, or I think it was Nova PBS, that the most rapid changes over the last 1.5 million years have been this thumb, and reflected inwardly in this part of the cortex. And in order for the cortex to evolve at the rate that it has been evolving the last 1.5 million years, the simian had to give up this huge jaw muscle. The jaw muscle that we have now is rooted here in the temples, right? And for the simians now, it's a tremendously strong muscle, right? And it's a great defense against hostile agencies trying to take your food, right? You go, you bite them. We don't have claws. We don't have spines like porcupines, throw spines at you. We don't have, defenses that other animals have. We don't. All we got left is the jaw. Bite. And we had to give that up in order to allow the brain to blossom in its capacity for symbolic language. Right, so it's our capacity for language and meaning and understanding what's going on metaphorically that has most acutely and most rapidly evolved to the ability to control, manipulate, have, possess, take, count cash, count picket signs, fire guns. Right? That's what we've evolved to do. So this capacity to acquire the known, to have, to control, to appreciate conceptually. I can know things and I can have that knowledge and I can use that knowledge. That has been the human being's most rapid chase over the last 1.5 years, and one could argue more acceleratedly over the last 500 years, even more and more acceleratedly over the last 40 years. The rapid advancement of technology to apprehend, control, acquire, manipulate information, the known, has been our chief motivator for very recently, right? That has created tremendous strife on the earth. Wars, my beliefs, your beliefs, my wealth, your wealth, take your wealth, conquer, control, right? That's a disorder, that's a disease. And we have not, in any ways, collectively stepped forward to heal it, to cure it. So we are all in a great disorder of the fear of death, fear of ending the known. And when we look at fear itself, what is fear? What is fear? Fear only arises in the projection of the known. Fear only arises as a result of the consideration of possibility. We said yesterday, the consideration of the possible is ego activity. It's like, well, what if, and what if that happens, what if this happens, the stock market crash, or the virus comes and gets us all, right? That fear of losing the known is suffering. When we talk about death, we talk about the ending of the known. And very few people have a capacity, really strong capacity for that. But that capacity to end the known both destroys, eliminates, dissolves fear itself, and one is no longer afraid of death. Because one can enter the new without having to control it, without having to build up refuge in the beliefs, in attachments, holding on to one's story. One can simply be. Right, I've done personally long enough meditation to see that, to embody that, to know that, to GNO, gnosis, to know that. Get rid of the K. To know. Right. And so the known, we've got to consider this in three parts: the knower, the known, and the knowing. Right? And two of those are part of the duality: the knower and the known, subject and the object. As long as that subject, myself, me, persists, there's going to be an object, the known. That, what I have, there's my bank account, my identity, all that. There's the knower and the known in constant duel duality. And of course there's fear there. But if one can simply be, then it's knowing that's taking place. And the only object of knowing is truth. And the only fair identity of truth is this now. This ever moment. The lasting fullness that is, here's our philosopher friend, whose name, Michael Kozak. I met him when I was 19, 20 years old. He was a professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Not a man of great repute. You look up Michael Kozak, you'll realize he did one book and wasn't well known. The book is really dense, it's not really well written, but he does illustrate these triads, these three things. And at the time, in my young 20s, I was fevered on this notion that everything can be understood in three numbers. 1 means existence, 2 means potentia, and 3 is life. I wrote that down and been chasing that ever since, and things still fall in that direction. I still appreciate things in that way. 1 is consciousness, awareness, singularity. Consciousness is singular across the universe. There aren't consciousnesses any more than there are waters. There's just water. Water has a singular identity, right? You can have icebergs and icicles and snowflakes and rivers and streams and clouds, but it's still just singular water. Same as consciousness. So when we talk about death, what is death? What happens when you die? Right? We must appreciate that there are two things that are going on. One is your body, one is you. You cannot die. You have never died. You have never been born. Your body has. The field of the collectivity, the accumulation of the known begins at conception. The accumulation of a form and a structure and a coat hanger start hanging clothes on begins there. But that's just the collectivity of the known and the recollection of memory. I don't want to start talking about the Akashic fields just exactly yet. We're not going to go there too soon. But your karma, so your karma, where you came from before you were born, not a blank slate, right? That hangs in the Akashic fields, that hangs in a non-local field. We'll bring Rupert Sheldrake in here. We'll get Rupert Sheldrake at the table and his morphogenetic fields, and the morphogenetic fields are non-local. And you, your body, your birth, resonates into form out of those Akashic fields, out of what's held in memory, what's stored in memory. Your agitations, your actions, your activities don't simply go away when you die, right? They are held in tensions, right? When you were born, your attention and your distraction create those fields, recreate those fields, recollect those fields all over again. So you're born not too far away from where you last left off in terms of your journey, in terms of your horizontal recollection of your form. So when you die, you see the literature, you've seen the accounts of people having near-death experiences and floating up on the hospital gurney, floating off a hospital gurney, and look down on their body. They see, oh, there's my body, and here's the doctors talking, and you remember what the doctors say, and then when you return to the body, they remember what the doctor said. There is a dissolution of the bond from your